Well, hello, welcome to our continuing devotional through the book of First Timothy. We're now at First Timothy chapter 5, starting in verse 1, and we have a quite lengthy section, most of it dealing with how the church was to respond to widows as far as financial help was concerned. So I'm just going to go through this section briefly, reading it, but not necessarily commenting on every verse because of the length of the section. He says in verse 1, he starts with, "Do not rebuke an older man, but encourage him as you would a father. Younger men treat as brothers, older women as mothers, and younger women as sisters in all purity." So he starts by telling Timothy, listen, you can't just be a dictator. You can't just say, be commanding. If you're going to be a spiritual leader, it works differently than leadership might work in the world or in a military service. You got to treat people with kindness and respect, and remember that you lead by example and you earn that respect. You don't just simply have it automatically, and treat people right. Treat them as family. Treat them as you would those that you deeply love, because that's exactly what spiritual leaders should have for those in their congregation, that those that they minister to. There should be a family type love toward them. Then he says in verse 3, honor the widows who are truly widows. But if a widow has children or grandchildren, let them first learn to show godliness to their own household and to make some return to their parents, for this is pleasing in the sight of God. Widows was a huge problem in ancient days because there was no social welfare system. And once a person was a widow, a woman was a widow, she had no real reliable income, no way to support herself, no way to take care of daily needs. And so the church would step in, as they should, and help out financially. But he's saying not everyone's in the same situation. Just because somebody is technically a widow doesn't mean they should be put on the list of helping them financially, but help those who are truly widows. They're truly alone, what he's saying here. Some of them have children, some of them have grandchildren, and it's the responsibility of children and grandchildren to take care of their parents and their grandparents. I know that somehow that's lost uh, uh, favor in our society, and we expect the government to do that. But the Bible teaches us that we're to do that. That's one way of showing godliness. It's also another way of just simply blessing in return for all the years that they invested in us. Goes on to say in verse 5, she who is truly a widow is left all alone. She has her hope set on God and continues in supplications and prayers night and day. But she who is indulgent is dead even while she lives. So there are some widows who are simply trusting in God, serving God, following God, praying to God. But some people, particularly maybe some of the younger women who are widows, they're like, hey, I'm free. They looked at it as a chance just to go out and party hardy. And clearly there were some character issues there, and they should not have been put on the list to help financially. He tells him in verse 7, command these things as well, so they may be without reproach. But if anyone does not provide for his relatives, and especially for the members of his household, he has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. He's saying if you got people in there who have family members, and it may be a mother, a grandmother, a father, a grandfather, a child, a cousin, whatever the case may be, and they're not willing to step up to the plate and they have the ability to help them out financially, uh, they might as well deny the faith, because that's worse. Even unbelievers help their family. So for a Christian, just to kind of be a tightwad and say, no, that's your problem, not my problem, it is a particularly serious moral issue. Goes on to say in verse 9, let a widow be enrolled if she is not less than 60 years, if she is not less than 60 years of age, having been the wife of uh, one husband, and having a reputation for good works. If she has brought up children, has shown hospitality, has washed the feet of the saints, has cared for the afflicted, and has devoted herself to every good work. And the idea here being that the church has limited financial resources, and those ought to be focused on those who are truly in need. If somebody's younger, they have other options. They can remarry, they can work, they have other options to support themselves. Or if somebody has character issues, because some people try to abuse the charity of the church. And he's saying if you get somebody who's not really following Christ, and they're sleeping around, they're not hospitable, they're not a servant, they're not devoted to good works, they don't really exemplify a true faith in Christ. Those are not necessarily the people the church should use their limited resources on. It should be those who are in true need, and have true character of God in their life. Verse 11 goes on to say, but refuse to enroll the younger widows, for when their passions draw them away from Christ, they desire to marry, and so they incur condemnation for having abandoned their former faith. Besides that, they learn to be idlers. They go from house to house, not only idlers, but also gossips and busybodies, saying what they should not. And what he's saying here is you got a certain group of people who are just kind of not really sold out for Christ, but they see a chance to get a paycheck. They see a chance to get some income. But as soon as they find another person, maybe of a different faith, a pagan, and they're willing to walk away from Christ, they're saying, wherever I see a better deal over here, I can get more money from this guy than I can get from the church. And he's saying you don't want to put people in that position. They're not truly sold out for Christ. And verse 13 says, besides that, they learn to be idlers, going from house to house, not only idlers, but gossips and busybodies, saying what they should not. Therefore, because this is a problem, moral problem, he says in verse 14, I would have the younger widows marry, bear children, manage their households, and give the adversary no occasion for slander, for some have already strayed after Satan. Then he goes on to talk about in the final verse, verse 16, if any believing woman has relatives who are widows, let her care for them. Let the church not be burdened, so that it may care for those who are truly widows. And I know I had to go over that really quick, and this devotional is already longer than normal. But what he's saying here at the end of the day is the church is supposed to help people in need, but it has limited resources, and it should be helping those who have no other recourse, no other option. That's the main point of verse 16. So I hope you'll think about how this might apply to today's situation, which might be slightly different, but clearly there are people in need. And how do we as Christians respond to those needs, and where should we direct wisely the resources that God has given us? I hope you'll consider these things. Have a blessed day.